Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Tress from Wonderman Thompson, and this is the first lecture that kicks off the Informing Creative Development class. So let me see if I can share my screen here, see if that works. All right, hopefully you will be able to see that. So introduction to creative development. Let's just back up for 1 second and talk a little bit about what you're going to walk away from this certificate with. The certificate is about applying a modern consumer-centric approach to the development and optimization of marketing activities. We take you through identifying business goals, objectives, and strategies relevant to that process, assessing the requirements of an effective marketing and advertising plan to support those objectives, develop actionable insights from consumer and market data, integrate the research and insights into what we're going to talk about in this course, the development, testing, and optimization of messaging and creative assets, evaluating media, your choices, your mix, and your plans, and how that's going to affect your business goals, and then measure the effectiveness and efficiency of that campaign and determine appropriate optimizations. And along the way, you're going to meet a bunch of interesting industry leaders. So you will have taken at least the foundations course. I'm not sure what other courses you have taken, but this course builds on that content and reinforces some of the things that you will have heard in the other courses as well. What are you going to walk away from this course with? The ability to justify the role of research throughout the creative development process, recommend research approaches to inform what research to do, especially how to understand the balance between rational and emotional advertising and performance versus brand campaigns, design and recommend an appropriate research plan to support a creative campaign platform, integrate those insights into an impactful creative brief. And we'll talk later about what a brief is and why it matters and how research feeds into it. You'll be able to recommend appropriate research tools to optimize creative assets, as well as understand how to develop creative assets, create a story-driven analysis of research and insights and recommendations, and lead effective conversations and briefings with multiple stakeholders throughout that journey. So maybe you've seen this, I'm not sure. It sort of tries to encapsulate this whole course on one slide. If you haven't seen it, across the top, we have the different modules in this course. So we're going to start with where we are today, introduction to creative development, and then talk a bit about how do people, and in this case, our target audience, how do they perceive things, process information, and then make decisions? How do we then develop the message we want to put into our advertising campaign? What is the big idea? You'll hear that term a lot in advertising. So we're going to talk a bit about, well, what is it really, and how do you get to one, and what does it do? A creative brief, as I mentioned before, is really, really important in this process, and research plays a significant role in what gets put into that creative brief. And then talk about, well, what are the methods we have for testing creative? And then end with, kind of what, based on everything, all the research we've done over the years, what do we know about what makes a great ad? So those are the 7 modules that you probably already know. This next section here are all the different video lectures that you'll watch in this course. Beneath that are the readings for each of the sections. The assignments, you'll see there are 4 assignments in this course. And then what you're going to do in the live sessions when we get together. And you'll see that's a mix of talking about the assignments, different exercises, and meeting some super interesting guest speakers. And then, as you know, in this course, we use a PEDDR model, P-D-E-R, and the E in PEDDR stands for explore. So these are readings and or videos that you might want to engage with if you sort of want to go deeper on one of these topics. Yeah. So this module has 3 lectures. This one, the Introduction to Creative Development, one on key terminology of the creative development process, and then stakeholder roles and perspectives. By the end of this module, you'll be able to justify the role of research in this process, lead the broad creative development process in your organization, utilize the creative research vocabulary, because it is a little different than other areas of research, and manage the stages of the research in the creative development process across the key stakeholders. So let's get into it. What is the role of research in creative development? And any conversation about creative wouldn't be complete without at least one, and we probably have many in here, from David Ogilvy. Advertising people who ignore research are as dangerous as generals who ignore decodes of enemy signals, right? Research, and David Ogilvy was famous for advocating and demanding that research be a prominent feature in all campaign development processes. And you'll see why, I think, as we go through this, right? But making an ad is sometimes thought to be pretty easy. There's an old joke in the ad business that there are 3 things that everyone thinks they do better than everybody else. And that's drive a car, kiss your partner, and judge an advertisement. Everyone thinks they're advertising savants and they can intuit what's good and what's not. And, when you think about it, this sense is that making an ad seems pretty straightforward and relatively easy. If everyone can do it, hey, sounds pretty easy. And in fact, if you Google it, yeah, apparently it's super easy. Look at this, right? First thing, build ads in minutes, animate your ads easily, apps to create ads, easily create ads, build ads faster than ever. And AI is making it even easier. How to create AI generated Instagram ads. So boy, this is great. This is super easy. But of course, it's not that easy at all, right? Again, David Ogilvy, any damn fool can put on a price reduction, but it takes brains and perseverance to create a brand. And we'll talk about that in one of the lectures coming up, because this touches on kind of 2 aspects of why you even build a campaign. One is to build a brand, and one is to sell goods, and you're probably trying to do both of those in every ad, but you're probably trying to do a little bit more of one or the other on different types of ads. At its most basic, to get to effective advertising, there's a number of things you need to understand deeply. The first one, which maybe seems obvious, why are you creating an ad campaign in the first place? And in the ad business, I hate to say it, but sometimes you'll hear things like, well, we need to put an ad on. We don't have a new ad in the marketplace. We need to put a new ad on. And that's not really an answer to the question, right? The answer should be, we need to drive sales, or we need to get people to know about this new flavor that we came out with, or we need to drive people to our website, and we need to drive 20% more, right? They should be quantified. So we need to get something in market is a pretty poor answer to that question. You really want more specificity. What are we trying to do, right? And that's the second one. What do you want your ad to do? What's the goal of doing this? At the end of the campaign, what business result do you hope to see from running this campaign? We need to understand whom we're going to target in the ad, what we want to say in the ad, how we're going to say it, and where we're going to say it, right? And answering some of these questions, you would think that some of these, you would come into the campaign already knowing them. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Others here are definitely part of the creative development process, and it's where research plays, obviously, a significant role. And then, of course, digging a little deeper, that's at a very high level. When you dig deeper, You really need to have an empathetic understanding of your audience or your prospects and what they're thinking, how they resolve problems, and the process and criteria they use to make decisions. You have to possess a really deep, intimate knowledge with how your audience processes, perceives, and interprets your brand, your product, the content you put out in market, and the messages. And understand how a customer could benefit from your brand or product. Sometimes that's, I'm selling carbonated beverages, it quenches their thirst. But even deeper, what are the related emotions that benefit would trigger? What does using a particular brand tell the consumer about themselves and help the consumer tell other people about them? Right? So it's not always a straight line. Here's a product, it does this, therefore the benefit is that. Often the benefit is more nuanced and it's more complex. And there are psychological benefits that aren't always evident and obvious. But why do we use research at all? Why not just get a bunch of smart, experienced marketing and advertising people in a room and start ideating? Right? Well, there's a few reasons. One is that marketing professionals are often too imbued with what they call the curse of their own deep knowledge. They know too much. They're not your average consumer. They are going to react to a piece of marketing very differently than a consumer is, because marketing professionals and advertising professionals know a lot more about marketing than your average consumer does, right? It's obvious. And what's the likelihood that the experience in the room, those professionals, covers the diversity of motivations, experiences, needs, and wants of your target audience? Unlikely. But with that said, every campaign is a little bit about what's our experience, what does our gut tell us, and what does data tell us, right? So it's a little bit of all of that. Research is applied throughout the process. So prior to even getting to a creative brief. So the creative brief is where we tell the creative teams, here's what we want to do at a very high level. That's what a brief is, right? So before we even get there, there's a whole bunch of things we need to understand. What's happening in culture? Culture is the context within which ads will sit. So what's happening in culture can make our ad look relevant and modern or outdated and tone deaf. So we need to understand what's happening in culture. Someone once said to me, culture is the operating system with which we live our lives, which I thought was a really nice articulation of the role of culture in marketing. We obviously need to understand who's our audience, what segments of the audience are we going after, what are their motivations? And again, those motivations may not be, I'm thirsty, so I want a carbonated beverage. It may be, I'm thirsty and I want to show people that I'm making this up, right? Youth, I'm young, I'm vibrant, and Pepsi is all about being young. So Pepsi tells people I'm young, tells me I'm young, maybe, right? What's their relationship with your category? What does your category mean to them? Certain categories are indeed quite functional. Other categories, people have a relationship with them where that category and the brands in it mean a lot to them. How do we understand that? What's the audience's relationship with your brand? How do they see your brand? What does your brand do for them? What does it say about them? What compelling messages or claims could we say in our advertisement? What are our media choices? During creative development, we're going to be assessing and optimizing campaign ideas. Even before we develop an ad, we're developing an idea of what an ad might look like. And we test those and we optimize those. Once we develop ads, or otherwise known as executions, we're assessing and optimizing ads and executions. We're doing perhaps A/B testing to test which of two ideas or which of two designs or which of two layouts appeal most to people. And then once advertising is in market, well, what's the impact in the marketplace of that advertising? Should we be optimizing our creative after it's in market? Should we be optimizing our media plans? Right? So research is being done throughout this entire process. If you look at it visually, right, and we look across here, the stages in the creative process. So this getting grounded is understanding a lot of those foundational elements I was just talking about. Who's the audience? What are the segments? What motivates them? What's happening in culture? And all of that informs a brief. Maybe before we get to the brief, we're also testing messages and whatever. Once the creative team is briefed, they go off and ideate, they think about things, they come up with ideas for how this campaign could come to life. They refine those ideas. They weed out ones that they think perhaps won't work as well as others. Think about different ways they can articulate an idea, and then they build out a finished product, right? So in the early stages of this process, it's really about exploring and understanding the category, the people, the objectives of the campaign, all those things we're talking about, but also this word, inspiring. It's about inspiring the creative team, giving them enough inspiration to go off and actually create something fantastic, right? And that happens more at the beginning of the process. As we start to move through the process, it's more about assessing those ideas and optimizing those ideas. What research is involved? Everything, right? First, second, and third party data, aggregated or at the PII level, individual level, right? So the client may have customer data and make that available for you to analyze or understand, right? Or there may be third-party data that helps us understand how do people shop for our brand relative to other brands in the category. Client often has tons of internal research that they want the agency to see and understand and ingest in order to help them get where they need to go. Secondary research, reports about a category or culture or something. Secondary databases, so MRI, Simmons, TGI, Forrester, Euromonitor, usually databases that agencies have subscription to one or more of these that can help us understand someone else's analysis of a category, of a brand or media consumption. Social listening, which can help us understand how people are talking about a brand or a category in a marketplace. And then a fair amount of primary qualitative and quantitative research that we conduct to help us understand all those things we just went through. So as you can see, research is involved through the whole process. And there's a lot of different types of research. Now, which one of these you choose to do is going to depend on, well, what data do we already have access to? What do we need? Where are we in our relationship with this client? If this is the third campaign you've done for them, there's probably less of this you'll be doing than if it's the first campaign you've done for them. And depending on what the campaign is trying to do, you're probably going to conduct different types of research. All right, so that sort of wraps up the introduction to creative. There are two other lectures in this introduction class, so we'll see you there in a minute.